Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
Good evening, Greg Neitzert. With everything I say here at public input and all the things I do behind the scenes, I have one goal, which is to make sure citizens are treated fairly and everyone receives due process. I want to make clear again how much I like and respect city employees. They're good public servants. Sometimes we disagree on policy, and I may disagree with some of the decisions they make, but that doesn't affect my view of them personally, and I hope that attitude is reciprocal. One of my passions is zoning. I have a particular respect for planning staff because I know him so well. That especially includes Director Cooper. I think he's a great asset to the city. I hope he therefore takes this in the right spirit. I was very concerned last week when I was watching the Planning Commission, and it occurred when there was a conditional use petition, which you see up on your screen here, to allow a video lottery within 500 feet of a sensitive use. If you go to the next slide. So to set this up, if we look at the definitions in the zoning ordinance, the word shall is mandatory and not discretionary. The word may is permissive. And then if you look at the definition of a conditional use is any use that, owing to certain special characteristics attendant to its operation, may be permitted in a zoning district. Note the word may, it doesn't say shall. Next slide. So again, conditional use permits, the Planning Commission may authorize, and then it says the Planning Commission shall impose those conditions as are appropriate and necessary to ensure compliance with the comprehensive plan and protect the health, safety, and general welfare in the issuance of the conditional use permit. Once again, note the word may and not shall in reference to granting it. They can grant it or they can deny it. And note the wide latitude that they're given in the conditions that they could place. The plain, unambiguous language of the zoning ordinance makes it clear a conditional use can be denied by the Planning Commission or the City Council, and they have wide latitude regarding the conditions they can impose. There is a quote from the city staff: "You don't get to approve or deny it, you get to look at the 4 conditions." Staff who provide guidance to the Commission tells them flat out they cannot deny a conditional use permit. He also references 4 conditions. We'll get to that later. Where in the ordinance does it say that the Planning Commission and you cannot deny a conditional use permit? Why does the code say may grant a conditional use permit if it's not discretionary? Shouldn't it say shall? What case law says this? Why is city staff ignoring and directly contradicting the plain language of the zoning ordinance? Have you ever voted no to deny a conditional use permit? I know some of you have. Is city staff saying you broke the law when you did so? The South Dakota Supreme Court has upheld cases where a conditional use permit was denied. What does city staff know that the South Dakota Supreme Court doesn't? Next slide. Citizens voice concerns regarding hours of operation, traffic, safety of children, proximity to residential uses, among other concerns. When a citizen voiced concerns about the hours of operation, the applicant is called up who says, "I guess at this point that's not what we're here for. We're here for a conditional use." The chair of the Planning Commission says after his statement, quoting, "I agree. That's not what we're here for," in reference to what he said. So hours of operation are not a consideration at a conditional use hearing? It cannot be considered or stipulated? Really? If not at a conditional use hearing, then when? Is that really what the code says, or is this a directive from city staff? So what does the code say about hours of operation? So if the citizens voice concerns about the hours of operation, recall the language for the conditional use. They can place appropriate conditions. And then if we look at 16608, information on conditional use plans, in supplemental information, the Planning Commission or the City Council may approve additional conditions to be shown on a conditional use plan, addendum, and then if you go down to G, hours of operation, and then C, there's proposed on-premise signage types, which is something else that they brought up, and I'll get to that. Next slide. Here's a conditional use permit approval, and if we look at it, this was for the Walgreens on 26th Street. And if you look at it, number 4, what were one of the conditions? Hours of operation are limited from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Next slide. So why would the planning staff support a condition they say is illegal? Did that city council break the law? Staff goes on to say that all commercial uses in this area, quote, are all going to have unlimited hours. How can he say that? What code says that? Then he says signage will be unlimited. Again, how can he say that? What specific code says that? And then if we go back to the 16608, it talks about that they can put limits on signage. So after all the citizens speak and their concerns are summarily dismissed, Planning Commission members ask what their power is regarding a conditional use. Once again, staff quoting exactly. It's an allowed use and it's allowed with conditions. You don't get to approve or deny it, you get to look at the 4 conditions. Again, what code says a conditional use permit cannot be denied? He also says you get to look at the 4 conditions. He tells the commission these 4 conditions are the only ones that you can place. But is that the only 4 that can be considered or stipulated? Let's check the code. I'm just about done. Section 166.16, conditional use standards outline specific considerations for specific uses. And then it lists the on-sale alcohol beverage establishment, and it lists the 4 conditions that he's talking about. All the specific uses they list specific conditions that only apply to those. But at the beginning of it, it says, conditional use standards. These standards shall be construed to be the minimum requirements for any of the specific conditional uses, and the Planning Commission or City Council can require additional conditions at their discretion. In all cases, the impact of the proposed use on the adjacent properties will be a major consideration. The code is very clear. The specific considerations are not the only consideration and conditions that can be placed. Staff simply misrepresents the plain language of the code after being told they do not have the power to deny a conditional use and they can only consider those 4 conditions. The Planning Commission approves it with no discussion. Am I over my time?
Yes, Greg, and I know you're a stickler for the rules, and right now you're at 6:07.
Okay, all right. So I would just finish by just saying, under these arbitrary rules, the deck is stacked, and what are citizens supposed to do? What is the point of a conditional use permit hearing? I don't know where this guidance is coming from, so you need to look at it.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Folks, anybody else? Welcome.
Scott Ehrisman, Sioux Falls. I actually didn't know what Greg was going to talk about tonight, so I wanted to bring up something. Jeffrey Schmitt, who he was referring to here, was at Democratic Forum a few months ago, and Jeffrey Schmitt talked about how they go through the process, the conditional use, and that the planning department will recommend something, and then the planning commission will recommend something, and then it'll come to the city council, and then they'll, vote for it. And we had a back and forth, and I said to Jeff, I said, but the city council can deny it, though. Is that correct? And he said, well, if this and that, and I go, no, they have the power to deny it, correct? And he said, well, I suppose if they don't like the applicant. But Greg said it best. It's a language thing, and you can deny. The planning department and the planning commission can come here and they can say, yippee yah hey, we got to do this, but you guys can vote against it. You can. That's what a conditional use permit is for. It's to listen to the citizens' concerns. Well, let's talk about something I was actually here for. I saw that we're closing the pools down early this year, and I guess it concerns me a little bit. We're going to have a pool that's going to be open 360 days out of the year, and I'm kind of concerned about how we're going to staff that. We talked about we can't have high school kids and we can't have college students. So how are we going to staff a 360-day year pool? And the Parks Department has known about this for a long time, that the school start date has changed. They've known about it since spring. What about teachers? Teachers are always looking for part-time help in the summertime. Can't they be lifeguards? There's all kinds of people. I think it's a wage issue, actually. There's a lot of people who are not going to work for $9.50, $10 an hour to be a lifeguard, which I don't understand. That'd be somewhat kind of fun for $10 an hour. But I think that next year, the Parks Department needs to work on keeping the pools open, all the outdoor pools, all the way up until school starts, simply because all we've ever complained about with the indoor aquatic center was, gosh darn it, these kids can't swim in the winter. But we have 3 weeks of summer left, the hottest weeks of the year, and the pools are closed. That's just ridiculous. And then for the last thing I want to talk about is, I noticed the city is using Promone to spray for mosquitoes. And I know West Nile is a concern. It's a disease that kills. But Promone is a very dangerous chemical, and I know it's concentrated down, but in its regular form, and when it's concentrated, it's very highly flammable and explosive. It kills bees, it kills insects, it kills small animals, it's bad for vegetation and gardens. It's a very poisonous chemical. And this is from Bayer, who makes the product. This is their description. Just Google it. They have a whole document on what their product does. And that concerns me. Now, a lot of people say, well, if we stop spraying, then all these people are going to get West Nile. And I say, well, maybe we should go to Wall Lake and spray everyone down with suntan lotion so they don't get skin cancer. But there are products out there that we can use. There's one that's called BTI, and what it is it's a bacteria, and it's put into a spray form, and all it eats is gnats, mosquitoes, and black flies. It actually crawls inside of them and eats their innards out. It's a nasty little creature, but it doesn't hurt anything else. It only attacks those 3 bugs. It has no effect on vegetable gardens or anything else. It has no chemical. Oh, actually, Pomona is really bad for the water, too, and I started thinking about how we're the 13th most polluted riverway in the country. And so it kills fish, too, by the way. So I know that BTI is probably more expensive. You know, I didn't do a cost thing back and forth. But there are alternatives to using a very bad chemical that is not just bad, it kills the mosquitoes and gets rid of West Nile, but it's killing the bees who pollinate, it's hurting our vegetables, it's hurting our waterway, and there's other things that we can do. So I hope in the future we consider this. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome. Ms. Kolbe?
Excuse me. Robert Kolbe. Most of you here are looking at government through the windshield, and I'm more or less looking at it through the rearview mirror. I've always enjoyed when the people used to come down to the county commission and used to come here to the city council, and they would sit and watch and listen and make comments. My relationship to Sioux Falls goes back to 1952 when my parents went through and I got my first pair of wool slacks. In 1964, I took my physical for the selective service just down the street here, and I remember eating lunch at the Rushmore Cafe, and of the 40 people that took the physical, 2 of us didn't pass. I got the same deferment as Cassius Clay. One of the other guys had a car. I rode back to Lamar's with him, and the other 38 went down to the liquor store, got a bottle, and got summarily wasted. In 1969, I came back to Sioux Falls. My wife had the librarian job at Sioux Falls College, now USF. 1972, I opened my shop, hoping to be there 45 years, 43 down. 1981, I started watching the county commission. After a while, I figured, these guys aren't any smarter than I am, so I decided to run, and the first run was with Jack Rentschler, Bill Reynolds, myself, and another person, I can't remember the name, and I had half the votes that Jack Rentschler had, and I thought, that's encouraging. The next time, in '86, I ran. Jim Zweep and I were in the same race, 7 people for 3 jobs. I went to bed number 3, woke up in the morning number 4. Jim Zweep had beaten me by 52 votes, and each of us had over 5,000. In the 20 years of being on the county commission, I had the privilege of being I had the privilege of being the chair of the commission for 5 of those years. We instituted public comment, which I always thought was valuable. Some places people get up and they play musical instruments just because it's public comment. Items of interest that I learned, I was on the Wall Lake dredging force for 3 years and found out one thing: you can't fire a volunteer. We did get the job done anyhow. I chaired the group that looked at the aquifer protection here for Minnehaha County. Brookings County had used wellhead protection, 50 feet, 100 feet, 500 feet, 250 feet. We decided to cover the whole of the aquifer from bank to bank, which was a benefit for the city of Sioux Falls, and I think that that's one of the best things that we did. Found out also that the bureaucrats who sit out here are no better than the person who can fire them. The bureaucrats that sit out here are no better than the person that can fire them. We had Robert's Rules of Order, and one of the things that I learned there was that when you have a motion, you ask for a motion, and if it's not popular, you ask 3 times for a second before you bury the motion for lack of a second. And I understand, the museum every year has a ghost tour, and City Hall is on the list now for the next ghost tour because it's been told, or I've heard, that Rosemary Wood's spirit, she died in 2005, infests this place because there was a 14-second lack of one of the tapes that the city has and records. So who knows, with a little luck and a reoccurrence, why, we might make Fox News.
Thank you, Mr. Kolbe. Is there anybody else who want to engage the council? Welcome.
Sierra Broussard, Sioux Falls. I was here last week, spoke to your secretary, Mayor. It was a shame that she wasn't here on some issues that we were concerned in the city. I have contacted your chief of police. Your secretary has contacted chief of police. Thank God that he has resigned his position and he is no longer in office as of October the 16th. As I stated for the alderman people, I am sorry for this issue that arose last week. It was an issue between me and the mayor that I have been asking for 4 weeks for your attention for this human trafficking, all of these crimes that are occurring in the city that is not handled correctly by the police department. As a civil rights activist, I shouldn't have to go in a public accommodation and start suing because people are discriminated by race or age. It is your responsibility. You're the ones that put these businesses here. They need to be trained on public accommodation discrimination. Your secretary told me that she was going to be here on top of the chief of police to hear me out on these issues and so say you were sick. Your Honor, Mayor, I do not like to get in politics. This is my last time in here, but I'm not pleased how you run the city at all. You don't run it, you're here for the people. The chief of police is here for the people. You're not here. The people don't work for you. The people don't work for the chief of police. The chief of police, when he is leaving the position he's leaving, that was in the best interest for him. Because I can see it on the outside. Talking to people, looking at the people, looking at situations in the city, looking at the crime level, it was time for him to leave. 25, 30 years as a police officer, that's great. But it didn't take him as a chief of police to run the city right? No. If I would get into details, which I'm not because the public is involved here and I don't want the public paranoid, but we have a lot of issues arising here. Just yesterday, last night, for example, I rode the taxi. We was robbed at gunpoint. Did he call the police? No. Why? Why didn't you call the police? He has dealt with the police twice on the issues of robbery, and nothing has gotten done about it. These are the issues that we're facing. We're facing prostitution. We're facing human trafficking. Rape every day. People on the street corners selling drugs. On the street corners. When crimes like that happen in a city, it's because the community and the police are not working together or the police is not doing their job, one of the two. Nobody should be on a street corner selling crack cocaine on the street, especially 2 blocks from the police station. Your Honor, Mayor, I don't have nothing else to say. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my activist work and I'm going to get involved in the community. And, it might be political. You might not agree with my tactics, but when I start catching these public accommodations, they either get the education that they need, or we're going to start filing civil lawsuits, and we're going to start shutting the businesses down. And then that's all that I have to say here, Mayor. But I shouldn't have to, in 4 weeks, talk to your secretary, and then talk to you, and then have to come here and talk to you, and can't even come to your office to talk to you. That is ridiculous here. It is a shame, honestly. Putting politics aside here, I cannot wait to the new election for mayor. I've been from city to city to city and did community activists for years and never seen a community like this. Please, Mayor, while you're in office in 2018, please, when people call your office, speak to them. Listen to what they have to say, because the crime is here. And it's about to start more and more every day. But no, nobody got time to listen to that. You rather just listen to people that want to put flowers on a boulevard and then we're going to cover that up with water, and it's easy to do that. But when you get to community problems, nobody wants to hear about that because it's too time-consuming. It's too many manpower hours at the police department. It's too many manpower hours to the mayor. But we have these issues. You don't want the crime here. You don't want people from Chicago here. You don't want riots to happen. You don't want protests. We don't want Ferguson, Missouri to happen here. And it's going to happen. Eventually, it's reality here. And I hope everybody in the background is listening to me. You have to be aware of your surroundings, okay? That's all I have to say. This is my last time. Thank y'all all that I have called and I have talked to last week about these issues. And I am sorry that I came so abrupt last week with y'all. Mayor, it is a disgrace that you wasn't here.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Folks, is there anybody else?
Can I ask her just two
Counselor,
questions?
no. Is there anybody else who wanted to engage the council, please?
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.